Jean, Mayank, Radhakripa, and Mukaravind, to name a few. Thank you very much. It's an important program today. I can say that because I'm not speaking my own words. I'm repeating the teachings that have been passed down over millennia that give us a better idea of how to navigate the world. And today's topic is about the three modes of material nature. Now, this comes up quite prominently in the book Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, which is a conversation about Atma Tattva, or knowledge of the self. Atma means the self. Beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the ego, we have what is described in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, the teacher, as an eternal identity. And it isn't subjected to the changes of the material world. And what causes the changes that we undergo in the material world? It's the mind. They take place within our minds. Sometimes we may have, at one point or another, we may have seen someone who has taken some kind of intoxicant and who thinks that the room is moving, where at the same time we see that person is sitting perfectly still and the room isn't moving. That movement is taking place within the person's mind. The ancient wisdom literature called the Yoga Sutras, written by Patanjali Muni, describes how the mind is a platform. And according to the receptivity of the platform, according to its condition, or as we're saying here, the mood of the mind, we'll see the world in various ways. Epictetus said, we don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are. And when he said that, translated into the language of Patanjali Muni and the Yoga Sutras, that means we see through the lens of our mind, and according to the condition of that lens, we'll see the mind, we'll see the world in various lights. Now, let me give you a definition of the word mood. According to the English dictionary, mood means a temporary state of mind or feeling. Another, an angry, irritable, or sullen state of mind, or the atmosphere of pervading tone, the atmosphere or pervading tone of something, especially a work of art. And we have numerous ways of describing it. In the thesaurus, we have a frame of mind, similar to what I mentioned about a lens. State of mind, emotional state, humor, temper, disposition, spirit, tenor, vein, and so forth. So in this context, all suffering comes from the mind. It is what we're observing the world through. In other words, to say it in proper English, when we see the world, we're not seeing it directly. We see it through the lens of our mind. And in the course of the day, our mind may be in various states in the course of our lives. And therefore, we see the world in various ways. Now, back to the Bhagavad Gita. How can we improve? And how do we navigate what are called the three modes of material nature? These are in Sanskrit called gunas or ropes. I once saw a movie in which a burglar had to navigate a series of laser beam lights that were shining in various patterns across the room. And in order to not trip the alarm, the burglar had to artfully avoid each one of them. So there's a way in which the modalities are a little hard to get around because they're actually woven into the fabric of the world. They're called also gunas, means also ropes. They bind us in certain ways to certain conceptions. I like certain things because of my conditioning by the modes of material nature. So let's go through some of the teachings about this and find out ways that are very practical in which we can improve our condition in the world. How's that sound? So, just as a preamble, three modalities are called sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva is the best. Sattva, good. Rajas, not so good. Tamas, bad. So it goes from good to bad to the worst. And the advice given in yoga literatures is to elevate oneself out of tamas, darkness, out of passion, intense desire for material enjoyment, up to sattva, in which one achieves a sense of peace and clarity. So then the next question is how to do that. We'll talk about it. So let's go into this, starting with mood made mind. We'll look at the picture because JM's become quite the artist in developing these slides. And in the mood made mind, we see a character sitting by a lake, apparently with some illuminated mountains. And then we see three bundles of threads. These, I think, in the conception of this picture, are the three modalities or ropes, gunas, called sattva, rajas, and tamas. So sattva would be on the right. Not that it's always on the right, it's just the picture. But it's white, indicating purity of mind. Rajas is in the middle. The red stands for passion, for getting to the next destination, getting the next best thing. And we never quite arrive there. And the third on the left, which is dark purple, is tamas, which is confusion, depression, darkness, always making the wrong decision. So that this picture shows how the modalities are touching the mind. And indeed, as we're moving about the world, we're affected by these modes. I'm going to read directly from the Bhagavad Gita as we view this picture. In the beginning of the chapter on the three modes of material nature, it's chapter 14, there's this summary at text 5. Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, he or she becomes conditioned by these modes. So it's the conditioning of the modes that dictates our experience of the world. So that's a preamble. Now, to the first slide, which is a reference to the book, the Yoga Sutras. The phrase on the right, in parentheses, chitta vritti. Vritti means turning. And chitta refers to our mind. The mind is subtle. And the author of this book on psychology, written thousands of years ago, gave this analogy that just as there are waves in a lake, there are waves in your mind. These are called chitta vrittis, or the turnings or the waves within one's mind. So, how do these manifest? What do they look like? There are thoughts, there are feelings, there are desires, all recorded within our mind stuff are the various images we've received through association over a long period of time. And they manifest in our mind as desires. For instance, where do certain desires come from? If you want to buy a red car, maybe you saw somebody you admired driving in a red car, and you thought, I want to look like that someday too. So I'll need a red car to achieve that look. Feelings. We're sentient beings means we're sensitive. We have senses. We can feel. And the various feelings we have for things and for others come about by combinations. It's a natural that we have feelings, but they are formed in a specific way because of our involvement with the modes of material nature. For instance, I may have feelings for a particular species of animal because I grew up with them or something like that. I like a certain kind of, I have feelings for certain countries because I knew people from those places. And then, of course, we have thoughts, which are constant, is described in the Bhagavad Gita, how the mind is a thought factory. It's constantly uh, churning out various ideas. So we have thinking, we have feeling, we have willing, similar to desiring, we want certain things. And all these are going on within the mind. So in the picture, we see the various desires, feelings, and so forth, disturbing the surface of the lake. So our mind also moves because of these vrittis, desires, feelings. And in fact, on a macro level, who we are now, the kind of body we have now. I mean, notice that you have a particular kind of body and that you didn't exactly put in for it, you just got it. You were born in a particular place and you came out with particular characteristics. Now, I'm talking about transmigration of the soul, moves from one material body to another. Some people call it reincarnation, which means you get a new set of flesh. That's what the word means, really. And how does that come about? It's dictated by what's in our mind when we leave the last body. And Patanjali Muni gives this analogy that when you leave footprints in the sand and you fill them in, then you get an impression of your foot. So when we have impressions in our mind, the mind then puts in an order for the next body that we achieve. And if we look at the next slide, which is one of my favorite slides, because it gives an overview of our sojourn in the material world. According to the ancient wisdom literatures, there are 8,400,000 species of life. And the human form is especially capable of perceiving causality and understanding that there is an original source and endeavoring for that. We go through what we're calling here the cosmic machinery. And all of that is being dictated by our mind, this journey from one species of life for another to another. And to be perfectly clear, the Bhagavad Gita describes how we're not our body, whether we are in a horse body or a cow's body, or I see alligators in there, or humans, man, woman. All these bodies are superfluous to our Atma or our self. We animate the body, and the body is provided to us through the cosmic machinery. There is a very sophisticated way in which we receive new bodies based on our very strong impressions in the mind. And those are, in general, affected by the three modalities, the three modes. So what mode? They're combinations and permutations, 3 times 3 and 9, 9 times 9, 81. You keep doing it and you get millions of combinations and permutations of mindset, which dictate which kind of body we will be accommodated with in the next life. And that brings us to the next concept, which is karma. When we come into this body, the body we have now, as it develops, as our mind unfolds, we'll be impelled towards certain choices. We may think I'm making independent choices, but the Bhagavad Gita says, no, you're not. You're being pushed to accept certain things and reject others based on the condition of your mind. And the condition of your mind is because of the combinations and permutations of the three modes of material nature. So the definition given here is when one's present choices are being impelled by one's mind accumulated past impressions. That's called karma. It means you're being moved along. So a clear analysis comes in the next slide of what these modalities are. Know your modes. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says. Be clear about what the modes are. Learn to recognize them wherever you go. Just like if you're going to go hiking in the hills here in California, you want to know what poison oak looks like. Because if you are allergic to it and rub against it, there's a different effect from rubbing against an ordinary plant. It will leave a rash on your skin. So know your modes. What do they look like? What are their effects? So here's a chart, an easy chart. Looks like not even a bad look for a tattoo, right? Somebody could do that. Okay, the three qualities of material nature. Sattva, light. Rajas, confusion. Tamas, darkness. Now stay on this slide because I'm going to read you another definition of the modes of material nature and their effect from the Bhagavad Gita. Sattva, happiness. Rajas, active. Tamas, helpless. So we have various ways of describing these modalities, but they're extremely powerful and we're affected by them. Good to know. Happy, active, helpless. Which would you rather be? Full of light, full of confusion, full of darkness. Now we're going to get into some real definitions. So buckle your safety belts because you may recognize some of these modes or moods that are well defined in the Bhagavad Gita and other literatures that describe the effects of these various modes. Is everybody ready? I need a verbal yes before I take you to the next slide because I don't want to traumatize anybody.
Yes.
Or an
Yes.
emoji.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Carvin's really into it. Okay, thanks, Vicky. Thank you, Hitesh. Here we go. Tamas. Symptoms of tamas. Depression, intolerance, being fear-stricken, spurred by false expectations, delusion, anger, a stingy heart, or being hateful. Specific behaviors, lazy, uncontrolled addictions, frivolous. I guess that's redundant, uncontrolled addictions. Addictions means they're uncontrolled. Lazy, addicted, frivolous, quarrelsome, dependent, parasitic, hypocritical, constantly complaining and lamenting, chronically fatigued. Of course, that can be caused by Lyme's disease and other things, but can also have to do with a state of mind. Violent and inclined to perversion. Ouch. These are modalities. And just as a doctor might have studied virology and say, if you get this particular virus, here's what you're likely to experience. So similarly, in the psychology of yoga, Patanjali Muni, Krishna, and the Bhagavad Gita are explaining, here are some of the results of being contaminated by the mode of darkness, tamas. Can we avoid it? Yes. Otherwise, there's no point to the show today. If you can't purify yourself, why am I blustering on with all this stuff? The point will come in this presentation that it's altogether preventable, curable. Isn't that good to know? Don't you hate it when you go to the doctor and they say, yeah, no, you got something really bad and there's no cure? Say, why did I even come in? Can I have my copay back, please? So Let's look at the next one, Rajas. I mean, if you can tolerate this, if you want to tap out, let me know. I don't know if there's an emoji for tapping out, but if there is, you can use it. Rajas, confusion. Symptoms, pride, considering oneself superior to others, fondness for hearing oneself praised, overconfidence, inward anxiety, materially ambitious. And it says here materially because there is such a thing, which I won't go into now, as spiritual ambition. You want to make advancement spiritually, and ambitious isn't necessarily bad. Being ambitious, wanting to succeed and improve yourself isn't necessarily bad, but that's a different topic. Quick-tempered, motivated by prestige, similar to many of the others. Uncontrolled desires, dissatisfaction, even in gain and success. In other words, too much is not enough. You get it, whatever you get, and oh, it could have been more. That's Rajas. Exceptionalism. And here we have, that means you consider that whoever you are, whatever position you are in, you're the best. You're the best country, you're the best race, you're the best, uh, whatever it may be. Behaviors in Rajas, intense endeavor, addiction, belligerence, being prone to ridiculing others. In another place, it describes expert at ridiculing others, prone to advertise one's own prowess, justifying action by one's strength, and audacious in speech and action. We can think of personas. We can think of any ways we may have experienced these symptoms. And to give you a little relief, we're coming into sattva, sattva symptoms. Humble, content, satisfied in any condition. Try to identify if any of these relate to you. And if so, you're touched by sattva. Controlled mind. Somebody says something to you nasty. Can you let it go? Tolerant, clarity of mind, discriminate, learning from the past. It's part of being discriminate. Insightful of the future. And this is an interesting one, embarrassed at one's own improper action. If one is shameless, one may be in the mode of ignorance. He may do something untoward, unseemly, and not even care, not even notice that you're doing it. Whereas somebody in the mode of goodness is sensitive to the feelings of others and how one is affecting others. Here's some behavior: equipoised, self-restrained, controlled senses, generous, charitable, truthful, modest, free from frivolity, detached from sense indulgence. That means you're balanced. For instance, in eating, you don't eat just to eat. You eat to live and be healthy so you can do good things. Dutiful. It's been assigned to you, so you do it. Simplicity in dealings. Peaceful, compassionate to humans and animals, and consistent in word and deed. These are just a few. There's not an exhaustive list, but it gives a sense of this, these symptoms that are induced by the various modalities. So now let's take some reflections. What have you heard so far? What kinds of, yeah, what have you heard so far? Or if you have a question you think would expand the conversation.
Hitesh posted on the chat Wow, this sounds like majority of the issues world is facing these days.
You bring up a good point, Hitesh, because there's a way in which when we look to solve problems, either personally, personal problems, interpersonal problems, or socio-economic problems, the Bhagavad Gita recommends start at the root, find out how to purify the mind, because you can't deal with something from passion and ignorance and expect to get a good result. Look, we got junkie here.
It's a little bit terrifying to when you go through that list, especially Rajas and Tamas, because it's like it almost feels like, you know, like you're looking in the mirror and you're like, oh yeah, I have that, like a little bit of each of that. And it makes you realize it just makes you realize, you have such a long journey to go, right? And it's just very scary because when you read through that list, you're like, okay, like a simple thing like just controlling how you eat and what you eat is just so difficult. And, so it kind of makes you realize how much far you need to go.
Yeah, it does. It does. And we we needn't be discouraged by that because the general theme of all these literatures is that anyone can rise in due course of time. And if you do it step by step, first by getting knowledge and then having practice. These are the two things you have to have. First, you have to have knowledge, then you have to practice. Ignorance doesn't help. Ignorance can also mean ignorance. There's a story of a famous musician. His name was Warren Zevon. And from the time he was a child, he was always afraid that he might die of cancer. He did die of cancer. But the fear caused him to ignore any symptoms he had when he was an adult because he was so afraid of going to the doctor and hearing that he had cancer that he didn't go. And he missed the time frame when it was at stage 1 and 2 when he could have cured it, but he let it go. And then it was too late. And so, yeah, it's a little scary to hear the C word, but if you're proactive and you go in early and say, "Yeah, I understand. I have some of these symptoms. So what can I do about it? How can I start now? A little bit at a time. One can catch it in the beginning and make progress. That's the optimistic part about it. Jam, we're getting a few more. Thank you, Junkie, and thank you everyone for weighing in today on our Juneteenth weekend holiday together here. Go ahead. Who else, Jam, can we hear from?
Here, Mayank, who says the symptoms of the three modes seemed pretty similar to personality descriptions based astrology signs.
Now that's a good indicator that it's a science. Because if you start finding it everywhere, that there are these categorical descriptions of various symptoms, you can understand. Now, what's causing them, that's what we're talking about. And that helps because if you know the cause, then you can go to the root and look for the cure. But yes, definitely uh, definable in various other psychological analyses of the human psyche, for sure.
We have Nicholas who says, doesn't people that go towards sattva increase rajas as a side effect?
No, not necessarily, but let me read something to you, Nicholas. Again, from this chapter on the modes of material nature. And this is for those who are keeping score at home, in chapter 14, text number 10. Krishna says here about the modes of nature, the three modes. He says, sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times, ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there's always competition for supremacy. So it's an unstable environment, and we may be trending towards goodness, and then passion may defeat goodness, and it may become more prominent. we have a mixture of these modes. Everyone does in his or her life. Which one is the most prominent? And any of them can surge, especially if they're triggered by lifestyle and circumstances and so forth. And if we don't have some indemnification, and I'll talk about that in a moment, being indemnified from the modes of nature and how to do that, that's important, sort of a vaccination process against the modes of nature. So um, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you go towards sattva, you increase rajas, but there is the concept of moving from tamas to rajas, then to sattva. So you stair step your way up. But then there's something beyond sattva. It's above sattva. It's called Shuddha sattva, which means that it's no longer mixed with the other modes. So that's important. Go ahead, Jam. Let's see who else weighed in.
We have Zila who says, sometimes your fear makes that thing happen. You drive to it.
Yeah, nothing to fear but fear itself. The light of knowledge is always most important because, yeah, anyway, that could also be a response, right, Zila, to that story I told about Warren Zevon, that he sort of painted himself into a corner because of his fear. But
Yeah,
fear also
exactly.
is a symptom of darkness. Oh, Zila, go ahead, please.
No, it's just like if you're stuck in that darkness, right, and your fear gets the better of you, your actions feed into the fear, right? And then they get you where you don't want to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
exactly like your story.
Yeah, exactly. Well stated. Well stated. And so, according to the Bhagavad Gita, fear comes from darkness. And it gives an example, not directly in the Bhagavad Gita, but the commentators give this example that let's say you walk out onto your porch in the evening, you haven't put on the porch light, and you step on something round, and all of a sudden your mind tells you it's a snake, and you jump 2, 3 steps down, you jump off your porch. And then somebody turns the light on, and it turns out it was your garden hose. And so when we perceive something through ignorance, we take it for something that it's not, and then we become fearful. And this is the cause of fear, is being absorbed in illusion. So the main illusion starts with, I am my body. As soon as I think I'm my body, then I think, well, there's a shelf life for the body. Then what am I going to do? I'll try to maintain it as long as possible, but it only lasts so long. And then what happens with the so-called end of the body? I mean, really, as a friend of mine said the other day at a meeting, to get down to brass tacks, that's the cause of fear, is mistaking oneself to be a material entity when we're not. Yeah, nice point. Thank you.
We have Shiva who says, I have been sitting on a Cologuard kit for about 2 months.
Okay. What is a Cologuard kit?
Yeah.
Does anybody know?
Early colon cancer screening.
Oh,
So my doctor asked me to, had a kit sent to me it's about a few months ago. And
so it's proactive, you're saying?
I've just been lying in a corner collecting dust for a few months now.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I mean, sitting on, not literally sitting on it. You've been procrastinating, checking
been
it
sitting
out.
in a corner for a
No,
few months.
I totally relate with that because it is, I just want to go on with my life and live eternally. I don't want to be disturbed by any
Right.
this, that information, extra information. But it's mode of goodness. It's more thinking, okay, I'm not my body. My body's a car. Do I change the oil in my car? Yes. Do I check it out? Do I need to replace a part? Yes. One can be in sattva, one becomes more detached from the body and sees it as this is what I use to do my duty. And that mentality is driven by sattva. Yeah, good. Totally relatable, Shiva. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And then Hitesh again, he says, the rajas can really feel like sattva a lot of times if left unchecked. It's amazing how it creeps in.
The rajas can really feel like sattva a lot of times if left unchecked. It's amazing how it creeps in. Well, again, according to the Bhagavad Gita, you may be in sattva, but rajas may sneak in, and then you'll feel rajas. But sattva doesn't feel like rajas. Rajas feels like rajas, and sattva feels like sattva. And you'll know it when you're in. Well, if you're fortified with knowledge and you're in rajas, you may objectify your emotion and say, yeah, that was rajas. For instance, you snap at somebody. I'm in a hurry. Somebody says, can you do this for me? I'm in a hurry right now. And tone of your voice, the mode comes out. It's rajas. The other person reacts. And then you can realize it. And when you're in sattva, let's just say you have a spiritual practice and in the morning you took your time to go deeply within and chant your mantra. And you read something from the Bhagavad Gita. And when you look out, the sun's coming up and you realize, okay, I'm in a world, I'm just passing through. And someone says, oh, hurry up. Why don't you give me that paper? You're supposed to give it to me yesterday. And you notice that there could have been an impulse to say, why don't you leave me alone? It would have been rajas. But you just say, yes, okay, fine. I know I'm late and I'm really sorry. And I did write you an email this morning apologizing, but I'll get it to you by tonight. And it doesn't become, it does not escalated. Rajas tends to make more ripples on the water. Sattva doesn't agitate the mind so much. When you're in sattva, your mind's not agitated. You stay equipoised. Remember, that was one of the things. You're equal in all circumstances, loss, gain, victory, defeat. Doesn't mean you become ineffectual. You do your best in sattva. Where you become ineffectual, that's tamas. Tamas means you don't care, and even if you did care, you wouldn't do anything about it because you can't get off the mat. I've known people like that. They had all kinds of ideas for how to improve the world, but they wouldn't lift a finger to do any of them because they were too high all the time to do it. And that brought them in the mode of ignorance, and they just couldn't do anything to improve themselves. Okay, JM, what else?
We have Vaibhav who says, many times Rajas makes you feel that you're existing in the world in terms of appreciation, tend to prove yourself, like that becomes your identity.
Totally. Perfect description of Rajas. It's the idea at all costs, I have to keep my mask on to prove myself. When you're in sattva, you realize you're already something that's doesn't need to be proven. It proves itself. When you're in rajas, you identify with the body and you think like, I better look sharper than I am now. This is body, it doesn't look as good on other people's bodies. Or in rajas, you may think I look better than all other bodies or whatever. You make these bodily distinctions, and it's always, always a disturbance to the mind. It never feels completely satisfactory the way sattva does. And one more.
Yeah, Nicholas says, isn't Rajas very reflective?
In a way, it's reflective in a sense of the intelligence becomes sharp for material improvement in rajas. So it's reflective in one sense, and that is, okay, I got $100. If I invest this at 10% and I apply the rule of 52, I can figure out how many months it's going to take me to double it. And I reflect on how to improve my material condition. And that's the reflection that takes place in rajas. In, in sattva, as it's described in another book, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sattvam Yad Brahmadarshanam, when you're in sattva, you can see for yourself that you're not your body. You understand that I'm an occupant of a body and that the modes of nature are dictating various things, and you'll notice that you're not impelled by them. You're equipoised, even amidst the urges of the senses. And an example that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that just like in the ocean, there are millions of rivers running into it, but the ocean remains still. And so, in a similar way, a person in sattva, although there may be impulses coming to the body through the mind, that person knows I'm aloof and therefore doesn't overreact to them, reacts with discrimination. Vicky's there.
Yes.
Thanks for being here on Juneteenth weekend, Vicky.
Thank you for giving us this class on Juneteenth weekend. It's such a pleasure. It's the best way to spend the weekend. I have a question. How can I avoid artificial cultivation of qualities in the mode of goodness? And I ask this because I noticed that if I fixate too much, for example, on being embarrassed at improper action, I might find myself at the exact opposite of what I wanted, which is the mode of darkness spurred by false expectations. And I wonder if it's from the acceptance that I will always have some mix of the modes, but I should focus on transcendental sound vibration, like the Maha Mantra that goes beyond the modes.
Such a subtle question. Thank you for posing it, Vicky. And first of all, it goes to the tricky nature of the mind. We can twist our mind in various ways, or we may have an intellectual approach to this, and it may not hold. The cultivation of higher modes is more systemic and lasting than an intellectual approach, which is perhaps adjusting our mindset at any particular time. It may hold, it may not hold. And as I read earlier, Rajas may defeat Sattva, or Tamas may defeat Rajas and Sattva at a certain time with an upsurge. And we may be overcome and be surprised by it. So there is a practice behind it through which the mind comes to a state of noticeable purity. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's described as a progressive path. It takes time, and there are steps to be taken. That's why there's a practice. And when one comes to that point, one notices and perhaps is even surprised by one's own ability to control the mind and not succumb to the little tricks that the mind plays also. In other words, it's real. It's not something artificial, and we'll notice it for ourselves. The more that we're touched by the higher modes of nature, especially sattva. So how can you do it was your question, and that's what I'm going to go into next. JM, why don't we do that since I take so long with the slides, it might take us near the end. So coming to the next slide, as we've described the symptoms, here may be an obvious statement because this is a program about the modes and how to stabilize the mind. Yoga stabilizes the mind. Yoga, now let's be precise here. Yoga means huge, means to connect. We have to connect with our highest power. We're not the highest power, according to the Bhagavad Gita. There's a higher power above us. So we're consciousness, but there's a super consciousness that controls everything, including the modes of material nature. We can't control the modes of nature. They're too uh, strong for us. However, we can appeal to our higher power. If that sounds familiar, it's it's a ubiquitous concept. So yoga means to connect with your highest power. So we're spirit, there's a super spirit. How do you connect with that? That's the topic that a lot of people talk about and have for millennia in cultures all over the world, how to connect to that higher power. So here we say your subtle body, your chitta, it's part of your material body, but it's subtle, is volatile. Yoga is the process of bringing the chitta to stability. So that's what we want to get to. Stability has the same root in Sanskrit as sta, which means a place to stand. You got 2 feet on the ground and you're no longer pushed around by the modalities the way you might have been before. And then we come to the next slide, which is to overcome weakness of heart. Weakness of heart means I know what the right thing is, but I can't do it. If you've ever experienced that, we call it WOH, whoa. Know the difference between Prakriti and Atma. Now it sounds really technical, but it's something I've been harping on during this Juneteenth weekend presentation, and that is that you have to know who you are, because if you make a mistake on that level, It's like putting money in the wrong bank account for a long time, and then when you go to claim your wealth, it's not there anymore, or it never was because you put it in the wrong bank account. So know the difference between prakriti, that means material nature, and atma, which is yourself. That's important. And then you have to prioritize the investment in prakriti is a little investment is necessary to maintain our bodies and so keep us together. But uh, ultimately, it's not our main thing. Substantially, we have to invest in the soul. Okay, that's still very general. So let me get more specific. The next slide talks about making voluntary life changes. We call these VLCs, or we could have called them VLIs, voluntary life improvements. And how do we know that? What is an improvement? We have to come to a source of knowledge that describes how to improve ourselves. Just like if you wanted to have better health, it's a good idea to study health. You need to do level 2 exercise for, uh, to for a certain amount of time per week. You have to eat a certain kind of diet so you don't inadvertently kill yourself and so forth. So similarly, to improve oneself, you have to turn knowledge into action. So our senses can be used in what we call non-reward seeking activity. This is one of the fundamental practices of the recommended by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Doesn't mean you have to quit your job, but it does mean that you can invest your time in some non-reward seeking activity that naturally brings you to a higher position in the modes of material nature. Then, as you had suggested in your question, there are kinds of transcendental processes or practices. One of them is mantra meditation. It's ubiquitous. Practically every culture has some form of mantra meditation. And if you employ mantra meditation, the very word itself, mantra, means it improves your mind, brings you to a higher level. Then there's also hearing from wisdom literature. For instance, I quoted a couple times from the Bhagavad Gita today. Now, if you hear from Bhagavad Gita before you start your day, this from personal experience, you'll be more aware of what modalities you're encountering through the day because it describes what the modes feel like, what they look like. And you'll be careful, you by having knowledge, you won't be susceptible to them as you were before because you know what they are and what the results are. And then the last one is selfless service to our original conscious source. That means it's called devotional service. And when you perform that kind of practice, and there are various practices that are recommended for that, it brings you to the highest level of consciousness, beyond even the mode of sattva. The next slide describes something also very practical, which is upgrade the channel, UTC, upgrade the channel. And that means use discrimination, vivek, to choose your channels wisely. So what is a channel? It's the sound you choose to listen to and the goals and objects that you choose to focus upon. Where are you placing your attention right now? And if you adjust the soundtrack of your life, what kind of information are you ingesting? Is it coming from a source that's non-partial, or are you trying to make money off you? Or is it sound that's in the mode of sattva, rajas, or tamas, or is it transcendental sound? So that's one of the mainstays of the practice of bhakti is finding what transcendental sound vibration is, and then taking that in regularly because it naturally elevates you above the modes of nature. Radha Kripa.
I just wanted to share a quick reflection and also a testimony actually about what you're just sharing today. My niece, she was going through some challenging time because she appeared in a competitive exam and couldn't make it to the cutoff. And she was really struggling, and everybody was like complaining. And I spoke to her like 1 month ago, and then in the end, as per your teachings, I recommended her to do the mantra meditation, at least add a little bit to her life. And yesterday she called me. She wanted to have a conversation, and I spoke to her. Surprisingly, she was at peace. She was, it seems to be contented inside, and she's fully committed to work hard next time, taking a drop year and try again. She said, I don't want to prove anybody. I just wanted to do it for myself. And then finally she said, thank you, that what is changing in her life was what she started doing the mantra meditation in the morning. Nobody knows that. Actually, her mother also doesn't know that one part. So I'm just sharing the live testimony about how a pressure in the social circle or in the day-to-day life, when we are going through this tough environment, how the mantra meditation is making a life change. And I could feel the vibration in her tone was grateful and a contented and happy. So just thought to share.
Wow, thank you. A very touching story. And I think we may have to have her on next time.
Absolutely. I will ask her actually
Okay.
to join that.
Well, thank you very much. And that gives us an anecdote to go on. And then finally, there's a short subject, a video that talks about staying in sattva. Some very practical points here. Yoga is the science of balancing body, mind, and spirit. First, a little bit about the body. The Bhagavad Gita explains that we're subjected to 3 modalities: goodness, passion, ignorance, or in Sanskrit called sattva, rajas, and tamas. When we keep our bodies in the mode of goodness or sattva, there's clarity, there's health, there's illumination. Here are the ways suggested in the ancient Vedic text how to stay in sattva in one's body. The first is regulation. Our senses thrive on being regulated. As Agmandino used to say, never greet the dawn without a map. Know what you're doing and do it at the right time. When you do this, according to yoga wisdom, your senses will thrive. If you have an erratic schedule and you're doing different things every single day, your senses tend to become confused and they're covered by the lower modes of nature called rajas and tamas, or passion and ignorance. The second secret to keeping the body in goodness or sattva is our diet. We are what we eat, not just in body, but also mind and spirit. There are foods that are fresh, that are non-violent, that are tasty, and that nourish the body and the mind and the spirit. And if we eat those kinds of foods, our body will respond. It's a simple algebraic expression. If you put garbage in, garbage will come out. And whatever we eat pervades our body, what to speak of our mind. The third principle of the body is sleep. You have to have enough sleep, but not too much. The Bhagavad Gita says, don't sleep too much and don't sleep too little. Here's the secret. I learned this many years ago from my teacher. Go to bed early, wake up early. It sounds simple, but try applying it in today's world where there's electric lights and all kinds of stimulation that keep us up late. Resist that. Live a lifestyle in which you go to bed earlier and wake up before the sun, and you'll discover a whole new world. Not only that, your body will thrive. And then there's the cleanliness principle. Be clean. There's 2 ways recommended. One is keep your environment clean. Don't over-collect. Don't keep clutter in your environment. Get rid of things you don't need. You'll find that as soon as you get rid of things that you don't need, you'll feel peace. It's amazing, and it's so simple. The second is keep your body clean. Yogis sometimes take bath 3 times a day. Traditionally, yogis take bath 3 times a day. Clean water clears the mind. It makes the body vibrant. You can also try this if you want something exciting in your life. Take a cold shower early in the morning and see how you feel the rest of the day. You'll be stimulated, you'll be awake, and amazingly, even on cold days, you'll be warmer because all your pores will be closed up. These are basic yogic practices, and if you simply employ them, regulation, eating the right things, sleeping the right amount, and getting up before the sunrise, and staying clean, you'll find that your body's radiant, it's in the mode of sattva, and wisdom will come from every pore of your body. That's our Juneteenth weekend special. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining. It's been a long time coming for me. Been traveling. I went to Bulgaria, where I met very nice people. I never imagined going to Bulgaria, but somehow it happened. And then after that, we're at a retreat center near Venice, Italy. And it looked just like Northern California, only the buildings were more rustic. And then finally, we ended with a bang in the Mode of Passion in New York City. Although we were part of a festival that goes annually, it's since 1976, and I was there for the first one. It's a spiritual celebration and procession with chariots and chanting that goes down Fifth Avenue in New York City. You can't even get a permit for that nowadays. We started when we could, and they've let us continue that every year since 1976. And I'm glad to be home, to have some time. I have a notebook that I keep of things that people said, things I learned along the way, and I have a lot of processing to do. Hope to pass on anything I learned in these shows. And it was very heartfelt. JM called me this morning or last night, perhaps this morning, and said, people are out of town. It's a long weekend and so forth, but we really wanted to meet with everybody. And thank you for showing up, for being here. It was very heartfelt. And in order to express one's heartfelt appreciation, there's an ancient tradition from our friends in the Himalayas, the yogis. Sometimes they come out of their caves and they see one another on the tops of the Himalayas, and they put their hands in the air, opens their heart, and they have this phrase, Hari Bol, which means keep the transcendental vibration going, stay above the modes of tamas for sure, rajas for sure. Sattva you can live in, but try to go above it. And that's what that phrase means, rise above the modes. It goes Hari Bol. You want to try it before we go?
Yes.
I'm doing it. Hari Bol!
Haribol!
Thank
Haribol!
you, everybody.
Haribol!
Great to see
Thank
you.
you.
Have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.